All right. So let's talk about the marks of a vital congregation. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to share some thoughts about different marks of a vital congregation. And then between those moments, you'll have a chance to discuss them, okay? So the first mark of a vital congregation is a compelling sense of mission. Now, we've all heard about mission statements and vision statements. That's not what we're talking about here per se. You can be a church that has no mission statement but does have a compelling sense of mission. That is a compelling sense of what God has called you to do. And you can be a church with a mission statement that nonetheless has nothing to do with your sense of call and doesn't really determine anything. So a vital congregation has a compelling sense of mission. A vital church's mission is driven by a deep connection with the gospel. Okay? So it's not, although there may be social justice aspects to it, although there may be a deep sense of piety, those things aren't the ground of the mission. It's that deep, vital, personal connection with the gospel, the love of Jesus Christ, what it does in our lives, and how we're called to share that with the world. A church with a compelling sense of mission knows who it is, okay, and what it wants to be when it grows up. And I was talking with Rita about this, and she said, well, at 175 years, shouldn't our church be grown up by now? But her comment to me was, well, yeah, but think about a church that's 500 years old. We're just in adolescence. Another way to think about it is that all organizations go through life cycles. And so I would submit to you that we're in a part of our life cycle where we're maybe just in the beginning stages. And so we're trying to figure out how we want to see that develop and grow. In a church, there can be any number of things that tug and pull at its sense of identity and sense of call. That question, who are we, is always at the center of any organization, okay? And so there are things like remembering the glory days, or missions and outreach programs, being a warm and welcoming group, or just wanting to grow. The idea that it worked for all these years, so why can't we just keep doing it? We have a great music ministry, let's keep doing that. Children and youth are so important. There's conflict and past hurts that sort of push us and pull us in different directions. There are worries about the future. There are liberal and conservative elements among the congregation, both politically and theologically. We have leaders who are feeling tired. And we have that nice, familiar family feel that we want to preserve. Right? All of those and more want to push us and pull us. And when they're all allowed to operate without any sense of priority, it really can cloud our sense of who we are and where God may be calling us to go. And so it's that clear sense, compelling sense of mission that grounds a vital church. Okay, not only is that sense of mission felt collectively, but each of the church's ministries in a vital church are clearly connected to that sense of mission. And so whether you're in the choir or you're in the children's ministry, if you're teaching Sunday school, if you're helping at Baltimore Station, you have a sense of how what you are doing relates to that deep call of the congregation. And then finally, mission, and just to define this term, I'm not specifically referring to outreach missions projects, but the sense of call, right? Mission provides focus. And so vital congregations know who they are, where they are going, and why, and that helps make decisions about what to do or not to do, all right? Part of the challenge in any organization is how to say no to things that are nonetheless good. Because if you say yes to everything that's good, you won't have energy to do really anything important. All right, so that's the first mark, a compelling sense of mission. And what I'd like to invite you to do now is to have a conversation at your table where you do this. First, I would like you to identify 2 to 3 things that you think Chestnut Grove is really good at. And table leaders, you should take note of what people say, okay? Secondly, what parts of our ministry distinguish us from the social clubs or service organizations that are in our area. So how are we unique at Chestnut Grove, okay? So take a couple minutes and talk about those things, and then in the last 2 or 3 minutes, I would like you to try to rank the items that you came up with in 1 and 2. All right, rank them. So try to agree what's most important, what's least important, in particular, in light of the gospel. Okay, which of these things are most important and which seem less important. All right, go. All right, we're going to continue talking about this first mark, the compelling sense of mission. And we're going to first consider this passage from Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20. You may be familiar with some of the more literal translations in which Jesus says, "Go therefore into all the world and make disciples." Eugene Peterson, in his Message translation, which is a little more in vernacular, words it this way: "Go out and train everyone you meet, far and near, in this way of life, marking them by baptism and instructing them in all the practices I have commanded you, and I'll be with you as you do this day after day, right up to the end of the age." This is what most Christians have come to regard as the Great Commission. And you see the word mission in there? Co-mission means that it's the mission given to us by Christ. And in vital congregations, a commitment to the Great Commission really is at the center of what they do, and in particular, it changes the congregation's concept of membership. Vital congregations move from a traditional membership model to a mission-informed discipleship model, and let's talk about what that means. In a membership model, the church exists to provide spiritual services to the members. In a discipleship model, members serve God through the church's mission and ministry. You see the difference? Mm-hmm. In the membership model, the pastor is treated as a, quote, hired Christian to whom members outsource their spirituality. All right? So the pastor does all the praying, the pastor does all the visits to the sick, pastor does all the spiritually important work. That's what the members pay for. In a discipleship model, the pastor's role is to equip the members so that they can take ownership of their spirituality and engage in the church's ministry. Membership model giving is viewed as dues or payment for spiritual services. Discipleship model giving is seen as taking part in the church's mission. So I give so I can be part of what the church is doing in the world. In the membership model, there's little concern or awareness of those beyond the members because, well, that's not what the church is here for. The church is here for those who are members, and so this is what I concern myself with. In the discipleship model, the church knows the identity and the culture of the neighborhood and the community. Why? Because we're called to go and make disciples. And so if we're called to go, we need to know who they are, and we need to know what they're like. Likewise, or conversely, in the membership model, the community is largely unaware or ignorant of the church's presence. I can't tell you when I'm out in the schools or on the ball field, I hear people, when I tell them I'm the pastor at Chestnut Grove, they're like, "Oh yeah, that nice yellow church." And that may be, the fact that they can identify the church by sight or by name, maybe all a community knows of a church in a membership model. On the other hand, a discipleship model church leaves a legacy of offering healing and wholeness for people in need. Because we're reaching out with the good news, the hope and the help that it comes through Jesus Christ. In a membership model church, energy is spent avoiding changes that threaten the status quo because we exist for us and we want what we want the way we want it, and that's what we're going to spend our time protecting. In a discipleship model, that type of church will spend its energy taking risks for the sake of making disciples. Now, in some sense, these are caricatures. They're extreme pictures, but it serves to illustrate the different attitude that churches can have, all right? And churches with this compelling sense of mission that's informed by the gospel tend to follow this discipleship model. It's not to say that there's no membership. It's not to say there's not formal membership. But it means something different to this discipleship model church. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to take 5 minutes on your table and just talk about, no pressure, no guilt, but which of these features sound familiar? Which of these features does Chestnut Grove seem to have some resemblance to? You might find some in both columns, okay? And I don't need you to conclude which we are, but just talk about which of these features sound familiar. Go ahead and spend about 5 minutes talking about that. The second mark of a vital congregation is what they call contextual relevance. And I hope you can see that little red pin there, and that's our church, and that's a sort of a satellite image of our area. You can see the reservoir down below it and 83 going up. So the second mark of a vital congregation is contextual relevance, okay? So what that means is that the ministry of the church needs to be meeting the needs of the community that it is called to serve. One of the things when our group was trained in February, the leader of that training said, in short, place matters, okay? We are here on Sweet Air Road, just down a stone's throw from Four Corners. We are not in Towson. We are not in downtown Baltimore. We are not in Rhode Island. We're not in Kentucky. We're not in Southern California, alas. I just mean for the weather, right now. We're not in Fargo, North Dakota. We're not in San Antonio. We are here, and that matters. All right? And so vital congregations are aware of their place, and they are attempting to be relevant to that context. All right? Some of it has to do with cultural identity of the place. Some of it has to do with the types of people who are there, the demographics, ages of people, all those sorts of things. Okay? So, in vital congregations, decision-making as a result of this contextual relevance, decision-making is adaptive and innovative in order to be able to reach the community as it changes. Because we know no community is static, right? Just like our lives aren't static, the community around us is not static. It changes, and vital congregations are adaptive and innovative in their decision making so that they can address those changes. A really good picture of this that's not particularly relevant to us, but think about those urban centers where you used to have vibrant, wealthy white folks and churches that responded to that community. And then that downtown changes, and maybe instead you have a Spanish population. So now all of a sudden you have all around you people who don't speak the language, who have a bit different context, maybe different ages than the rest of the that's a challenge to be contextually relevant. But churches that are vital are thinking about how to be contextually relevant as the community changes. I want to give you a little closer to home example of this. Most of you know I worked for 10 years at Central Presbyterian Church. That's right in Towson, just south of Towson University. Eileen and I got there around the year 2000. We were not employed there. We were just looking for a congregation. And around that same time, the church was asking this question about contextual relevance. Here was their context, at least the context that they felt was important at the moment, that there were 40,000 college students within 5 miles of the church. Right? You've got Towson University, Johns Hopkins, Goucher, Villa Julie, which is now Stevenson, Loyola Maryland Institute College of Art.
UMBC.
Yeah, and further down the way you've got UMBC. But within 5 miles, there were about 40,000 college students. The reality, 5 of those 40,000 were regularly attending the church. All right? So the church, in a desire to be contextually relevant, made an innovative decision, didn't spend too long making it, to begin a new service. All right? And the new service would be not exclusively for, but designed to speak the language of those college students and also post-college young adults. Then there was a subsequent decision to hire a staff person to start a young adult ministry. I was that staff person. Eileen and I were also involved in starting that new service. Now here was the result. Within 1 year of the launch of that service, there were 50 college students regularly attending the church. And within 5 years, there were 200 plus young adults regularly involved in small groups. So like actually deeply engaged in the life of the church. And more than that, attending the service. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. In a lot of ways, as I've gone off to seminary and become humbled in my old age, I don't attribute a lot of this to my contributions. It was really about the movement of God and the church's decision to be relevant to its context. All right? That resulted in a tremendous amount of new ministry, making new disciples because of that decision. Okay? So it's just an example to say that decision making must be adaptive. They adapted by starting a new service, and that's not the only way that you could ever adapt to that situation, but it was what that church decided to do. Adaptive and innovative to reach the community. Okay? In addition, the church's language and forms of communication resonate with the community and the needs they experience. And so the ways we talked about the worship service, the ways we tried to reach college students and tell them about it, related to their felt needs, about coming and finding a church home, which college students really are looking for. The service itself was geared to speak to their cultural vernacular and the type of music that we used and things like that. And then finally, a vital congregation can answer these 2 critical questions about this issue of contextual relevance. Number 1, who are we called to reach? And number 2, which of their needs is our church called to address? All right, so the second mark of a vital congregation is contextual relevance. So time for a conversation again. And I'd like you to describe Chestnut Grove's community. I'm not talking about this community, but this community, all right, all around us. See the nice little map there? This is our ministry context in our community. Who are our neighbors? And who is in our ministry area? Okay? And then secondly, are our programs compatible with the needs and character of the community in which we're located? Please give real-life examples to the yes or no. Yes, we are because we're doing this. Or no, we're not because we're missing out on that. Okay? So take about 10 minutes, talk about this, and we'll reconvene after you have a chance to talk. Okay? The third mark of a vital congregation is passion and energy for mission. All right? And again, mission, we don't mean specifically only like outreach missions, but that greater calling to which the church sense God is directing it. Passion and energy for mission. Both, right? Because you can have passion but no energy. You might have some energy but little passion. A vital congregation has passion and energy for mission. So first of all, this materializes in a keen desire to join with others in common mission, all right? In a church, missional type activities are rarely, if never, individual events. I mean, it comes from Jesus' own words. Wherever 2 or 3 of you are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of you. That's why the central sacramental act of our regular worship life is communion. All right? This passion and energy for mission materializes in a keen desire to join with others in a common mission. Okay, it means that people in a vital congregation are willing and able to share their faith journey with words and with actions. Okay, there is evidence in this congregation, this type of congregation, that God is alive and active in their midst. I want to share with you the story of a young woman named Jessica Dykstra. She came into Central's young adult ministry with sometime within the first year or 2 that I had started it up. And she was new to town. She was working at Kennedy Krieger. And she really didn't know how to make connections in her town, in this new town. And so she said, well, I'm going to kind of do what I did when I was in high school. I'm going to go to find a church. And she found us. She didn't really have an active relationship with God. She just sort of had a history of going to church. But through the ministry of of Central, she got into a small group, and in that small group she developed a relationship with Christ, began looking at the Bible, hearing God's word to her, and all of a sudden her faith came alive. And I would see her on Sundays in passing. She'd just say, oh my gosh, we're just learning the most amazing things in my small group. And I can't wait till next week. And then the next week she'd say, I've got more amazing things. And by the way, I've been talking with my coworkers, and I think one of them's going to join me next Sunday. Before long, Jessica was saying, actually we were saying, we need some more small groups for some of these folks, and we need some leaders. And you know what, Jessica, you really have such a vibrant relationship with God. Would you be interested in being a small group leader? And she said, well, I have no idea what that means or how to do that, but sure. And she became one of our small group leaders, and she gathered around her a group of young women, and they started growing the way that she had been growing. That story continues the whole time she was with us. Eventually, she pursued her master's. She went down to Chapel Hill, and we sent her off. And when she got to her new congregation, she became an ordained elder in charge of the Young Adult Ministry Committee. And she's still there and now married and has children, and she's continued that ministry. But all that to say is, every time I spoke with Jessica, she had a story to share about how God was working. And in vital congregations, there's this passion and energy for mission that comes together in that sort of way. All right. This passion and energy is directed toward making new disciples and not just attracting existing disciples. And Jessica's a great example of that. Although she had grown up in the church, she really wasn't a follower of Christ as an adult. And so there was an opportunity for the church to make a new disciple and not just sort of attract people who are transferring from one congregation to another. These congregations understand themselves as missional. That is, they're focused outward into the community on a mission to make disciples, as opposed to attractional, simply opening up the doors and assuming people will just come in, because isn't that what people do? Finally, this passion and energy is focused on helping people live out their Christian witness in the world, where they live and where they work and where they play. So it's not something that just happens on Sundays or in small groups, but every single person in this community understands themselves as a bearer of the light of Christ, and that they carry that wherever they go. And so there are these little outposts of Christian witness, and the church the passion and the energy of the church is engaged in helping equip people to do that well. This passion for mission is found in all the core aspects of church life: worship, discipleship, stewardship, missions, evangelism. It's not that we farmed out mission to one committee. It exists in all of the areas of church life. And so when I was at Central, one of the people came onto the worship team. He wanted to play bass guitar in a good group, and he wasn't a believer. And we thought, wonder what should we do? Should we let him come and play with us, or should we say no? And we said, well, let's let him come and play. What's the worst that could happen? And wouldn't you know it, by associating with us over the weeks, he became a Christian and became a leader in the church. All right, so that was an example of the worship committee, or the worship team, living out this passion and energy for mission. Okay, and you'll find this in all areas of the church in a vital congregation. All right, so another discussion. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Chestnut Grove's A, enthusiasm for core ministry, B, level of energy for our core ministry, particularly as it relates to this disciple-making mission? And then secondly, a witty church leader once pointed out that Christians are to be fishers of people, not keepers of an aquarium. All right? You get it? All right? Takes a moment. So would you say that our congregation focuses more on fishing for people or on keeping the aquarium? All right? So spend some time, about 10 minutes, talking about those two questions, okay? Go. Fourth mark of...
Wait. We've got a quote that we must share.
So, okay.
We are a very welcoming aquarium.
You guys all hear that? She said, we are a very welcoming aquarium. That's great. I think that's our new slogan. Vital congregations are able to mobilize resources for mission. Okay? And there are three parts to this, okay? First are financial and capital resources. So vital congregations have sufficient income streams to fund the mission that the congregation is passionate about. Does not mean they are rich congregations, okay? Simply means that they have enough income to fund the ministry that the congregation is passionate about. Secondly, they don't regularly run budget deficits. They do not overdraw from their endowments for operational spending. Some people who know our budget patterns over here. Finally, the space that the church occupies does not sap the missional funding needs of the congregation. So just to extrapolate on that a little bit, a lot of older established congregations with old buildings find themselves in a position where the cost of the building is such that it tends to burden the church and divert resources away from mission type spending. Okay? So those are, under the financial and capital resources, some of the marks of a vital congregation. So let's talk about that. 5 minutes. Why might reliance on an endowment for the operational budget be a hindrance to congregational vitality? Maybe that's not completely transparent. Why don't you talk about that, okay? Secondly, in what ways might our current building inhibit the ministry and vitality of the congregation? Conversely, in what ways does the building serve our ministry? All right, 5 minutes. Why don't you talk about those things? All right, bring it back together. All right, so the second part of mobilizing resources for mission is being able to inspire and empower both lay and clergy leadership. And this gets to the time piece, okay? So that you have lay leaders who have the time, energy, and training for doing the work of ministry. So in a vital congregation, leaders' gifts and skills are well matched to their ministry needs. Okay? Secondly, leaders are intentionally equipped for their responsibilities and also know what's expected of them when they get involved and engaged. Additionally, clergy, committees, and lay leaders are able to work as a team toward complementary aims. So we're talking not just within a working group, but also among the various working groups. So the deacons are not working at cross purposes with the session, and the membership committee is not working at cross purposes with the mission committee. But there's a sense of collective action and complementarity. All right? Finally, significant time and effort is put into calling, nurturing, and training leaders. So there's an intentional leadership development plan. All right? The vital congregations know how to inspire, empower, and mobilize their leadership so that you have the leaders that you need to do the ministry that you feel called to do. All right? So let's talk about this. In your experience at Chestnut Grove, are our lay leaders' gifts and skills well matched to their positions and responsibilities? Number two, in what ways does our congregation recruit and train new leaders? Is there an organized plan? All right? Why don't you talk about that? The third part of being able to mobilize resources for mission is that vital congregations have good relational and spiritual health. Okay, so what is perhaps intuitive, but has also been borne out in research, is that mobilization of resources for mission is much more difficult if there are high levels of conflict, low levels of trust, or cumbersome decision-making processes. Okay? And all those things relate to a congregation's relational and spiritual health. Okay, so it's not that vital congregations have an absence of conflict. I mean, anytime you get two individuals together, there's going to be conflict. How many of you are married? How many of you have kids who are siblings? It's just human nature, right? I have things that I want, you have things that you want, and they don't always line up. And so figuring out what to do about that causes conflict. But in vital congregations, they've learned how to move quickly and decisively to resolve those differences. Okay? In other words, they practice healthy conflict resolution. Part of that is that decision-making happens through spiritual discernment, all right? So whenever you have a group of people together, how you make decisions is certainly important. Sometimes there's a very formal process for making decisions, right? We have a session, we follow Robert's Rules of Orders, sort of. We vote, we make motions, blah, 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 right? Maybe it's informal, right? Maybe one person holds all the power and they decide by fiat. In each of those ways, those formal processes or informal processes can turn into power plays and manipulation, right? We've heard, not here, we've heard of it, right? We've heard of these things happening. In vital congregations, decision-making happens through a spiritual discernment process. Whatever formal or informal means are laid over top of that. And the question really is, what does God intend for us in this time and place? And that, using that as a lens for decision-making really helps to cut through all of those things that make for power plays or personal opinions. It's not about you, right? It's not about one individual and their wants or needs at that point. It's about God's will for the congregation. Congregations that practice discernment of this sort tend to be more vital and minimize conflict, okay? Now, this particular element of being able to mobilize resources is a little more personal, all right? So rather than have you discuss it openly, what I'd like you to do instead is just spend a few moments of reflection, okay? And here's what I'd like you to reflect on. How has conflict resolution occurred in the past here at Chestnut Grove? Has it been healthy or unhealthy? Are there any past hurts that are still festering? Are you aware of any currently unresolved conflict? Do people trust one another with their needs, ideas, passions, and interests? Why or why not? Reflect on those things. Okay? Spend a few moments, just think through it. Think back to incidents that you might recall. And I guess I had another thought. As things come to mind, maybe also ask God what you should do with that. Okay? All right, spend a few moments in reflection. We come to you in confession, acknowledging that we are part of a community, a congregation that has been part of conflict, that we have not built at times the sort of trust that you would have us build through our own actions. And we confess these things asking for your forgiveness and asking for your help in moving forward. We want to be a people of grace and forgiveness. We want to be worthy of the trust of our brothers and sisters, but more than that, we want to be centered on you and your will, and that we might learn from you how we can be trustworthy people, how to be gracious and understanding. If there's any action that we as individuals need to take, or any action as a congregation that we need to take, I pray that you would lead us in that way so that we can step into the new health and the growth that you have for us. We ask these things through Christ our Lord. Amen. So those are the marks of a vital congregation, okay? A clear sense of mission driven by the gospel, contextual relevance, passion and energy for the mission that we're called to, and then the ability to effectively mobilize resources for that mission. Research has shown that regardless of a specific church's makeup, ministry location, culture, racial makeup, ethnicity, whatever, these are true across the board, okay? And these are things that this New Beginnings process is going to help us continue to think about. Today we're just sort of dipping our toe in the water. Okay? Thank you all very much. Don't forget to close in prayer and enjoy your groups this week.